Hello, this is your instructor Kumaran, and in this section we are going to see what is data science. Data science is something we have been hearing a lot about, but what exactly does data science consist of? What is it really about? So we are going to see two things in this session, and then the first thing is about what is data, and the second one is what is learning. So we're going to see some definitions of what things constitute a data science. So some of the things you are going to be seeing in this session might be things you might say are obvious things, pretty inherent things you have been used to, but it is good to take a second look at the definitions of each of them because they mean a lot to data science. They in fact form the very foundation of data science. So let us go through all these definitions here. The first thing, let us start about what is data science. Data science is the skill of extracting knowledge from data. We have something called data, and then data is something that's raw, and then you look at the data and you extract knowledge. Knowledge can be thought about as information, insight, any signal. There are different terms being used to represent knowledge, but it's pretty much something that you extract from data that is useful. And then you use this knowledge to predict the unknown. So you learn something about the past from data, and then you use that information to predict what is going to happen in the future. And that is what data science is all about. Data science, one of the goals is to improve business outcomes with the power of data. You can do predictions, but what is the use of it? The use of it is that you want to use data science to improve business outcomes. And you're going to be improving business outcomes using data. And that is what data science is all about. Data science employs techniques, theories, drawn from various areas, broad areas. It is not restricted to a single domain. So you have mathematics in there, statistics, information technology, data retrieval technologies, programming languages. We actually use a host of different techniques and theories and areas when it comes to data science. And what is a data scientist? A data scientist is a practitioner of data science. When I say practitioner of data science, we are talking about somebody who uses the theories and all the technologies and the skills of data science to produce better business outcomes. And a data scientist typically has or should have expertise in data engineering, analytics, statistics, and any other in the business domain also. And typically a data scientist investigates complex business problems and uses data to provide solutions. So the most important thing here is use data to provide solutions. So data is the driver for a data scientist. So let us go into some of the definitions of data. Now, what exactly are we talking about here when we say data? What are the various things that you have to learn about when you're talking about data? So we are going to go through a set of definitions here. Again, they might be obvious to you, but it is good to take a second look at all of them. The first thing we're going to be talking about is what is called an entity. An entity is a thing that exists, which we research and predict in data science. So an entity is a thing, an object, something that exists in the real world, about which we are going to be working on. So you have a data science problem. In the data science problem, you have a set of entities that you care about, and you do some research on them. You get data about these entities and then work on them to make your predictions. Entities always have a business context. There is a business context, which is the business problem you're trying to solve, in which the entity exists. So example of an entity, like a customer. A customer of a business is an entity. Customer is an entity, the most popular entity, I would say, about whom we do a lot of research and do predictions. A patient at a hospital is another entity. Now you see that the customer of a business and the patient of a hospital might actually be pointing to the same person, but they have different business contexts. So different business context means the same person, we bother about different information about the person. The person might be doing different things as a customer as opposed to what he would be doing as a patient. Entities can be non-living things too, like for example a car. So car is under, like, there are not a lot of non-living things on which you also collect information and you predict stuff. Moving on to the next item, it is characteristics. What are characteristics? Every entity has a set of characteristics. So these are properties of an entity. That is information about that entity. We call them maybe static information because they are kind of bounded to the entity, like name, telephone number, age. Those are all characteristics of an entity. And properties also again have a business context. At different business contexts, you bother about different characteristics for the same entity, or the role that the particular person plays in that given business context. For example, it's a customer, the characteristics you would bother about are age, income group, gender, education. For a patient, you are bothered about age. So the characteristic called age repeats, but now you have a different set of characteristics specific to being a patient, like blood pressure, weight, family history. So again, there is a business context or a business requirement which drives what characteristics you bother about an entity. Again, cars, when you look at cars, you talk about make, model, year, the engine, type of engine, like 4-cylinder or 6-cylinder, and the VIN number of the car. So these are all examples of characteristics. You might also call them as properties, for example, properties. Third one we bother about is what is environment. Environment points to the ecosystem in which the entity exists or functions. Entity doesn't exist in a vacuum. There is an environment in which an entity exists. So in that environment are other entities of the same type, other entities of a different type, like a patient entity exists in a hospital along with other entities of the same type, like with other patients. There might also be other entity types like doctors and nurses, entities that are non-living things like ambulance is an entity, a system that is used to monitor patients might be an entity. So entities, all these entities exist in an environment. So environment is shared among entities and multiple entities exist in the same environment. Environment affects an entity's behavior. So that is the most important thing. The same entity might behave differently in different environments, or even for the same environment under different conditions experienced in the environment, the same entity might behave differently. Examples of environment are like for a customer, the country, the city, the workplace the customer resides in. A patient, again, it might be the city, the climate, the hospital where the patient is currently in. For a car, it is whether the car is being used mainly for city driving or highway driving, that becomes the environment. The climate, cars perform differently under different weather conditions, like at hot weather versus snow conditions. Cars have different behavior. So all these cases, what you see is that the environment affect how the entity behaves. Now comes an event. What is an event? An event is a significant business activity in which the entity participates. Entity doesn't sit simply there, it does something, or somebody does something to the entity. That is what you call an event. Some business activity. And events again happen in a set environment. An entity like a patient goes to the hospital, and in the hospital the entity is treated for there is a set of tests that are administered to the given patient, and then you have some results coming out of these tests. So all these are events. Example of an event might be the customer browsing a website, customer making a store visit, a customer getting a sales call from some company to sell something. All these are events. In the case of patients, it is like the doctor's visit or a blood test. For a car, the smog test that a car undergoes, the comparison test, like if you go to any of these car related websites, you do see that they do like comparison tests. All of them are events in which an entity participates. Behavior. So an event is something where an entity participates, but what is behavior? What does the entity do in the given event? That is the entity's behavior. So an entity does something, and what it does in that given event is what you call the behavior of the entity. Entity might have different behaviors in different environments and different situations. And for example, in the case of a customer, in a phone call, whatever the customer talks is the customer's behavior. The click stream for a website visit, like which links the particular website visitor is clicking when he is browsing the website, that is another type of behavior. Now the response the customer has to sales offer, whether saying yes, no, is the customer happy, sad, all of them are different behaviors of the customer. Patients, nausea, lightheadedness, cramps, the patient's complaining about something, the patient's falling asleep, showing any kind of symptoms, all of them are behaviors of the patient. And cars, like skid, acceleration, the stopping distances, all of them represent a form of behavior of the entities. Now these are all the various things that you see in the real world, like the entities, events, and behavior. And now comes an introduction to data.